Notre Dame is set to host the 15th ranked Louisville Cardinals on Saturday in what is undoubtedly the biggest home game of the year for the Irish, and the result is going to make or break this season. My full preview is coming right up.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. And my name is Tyler Wojciak and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports. And thank you for joining me here on Wednesday, September 25th, and for making this your first listen of the day. As always, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Plus, you can watch the full thing on YouTube as well. Please remember to like the video and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, or rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, it's Louisville week. It's here. I can't say I've been looking forward to this one, but I am excited about the chance to get some revenge for last season. As most of you know, I am from Louisville, and if you are watching on YouTube, you can see I've got a picture of the Louisville skyline here to my left. I absolutely love the city, but I hate the college teams because I have a bunch of friends who are Louisville fans, and to their own admission, they can be a bit obnoxious, especially after they crushed Notre Dame in prime time to crush Notre Dame season and really kick off the Jeff Brom era for Louisville. But that is enough about me. This is a huge matchup for both teams. Louisville looks like a potential playoff team, one of the favorites to win the ACC, and Notre Dame needs a win over a ranked opponent to really right the ship after the loss to Northern Illinois a few weeks ago and to keep their playoff hopes alive. If Notre Dame loses this one, you can kiss a playoff goodbye, but if they're able to pull off the win, they'll go into the bye with a ton of momentum and all of their hopes and dreams still ahead of them. As for today, I'm going to go over what Louisville brings to the table, keys for the Irish in all three phases of the game. Then I will give out my predictions at the end. But we begin, as we always do in the preview shows, with what you need to know. So kickoff is set for 3:30 p.m. Eastern inside Notre Dame Stadium. It is the Irish wear green game, so you can expect a green out in the crowd. But as for what the players are going to be wearing, I'm honestly not 100% sure. I just kind of assumed that they'd be wearing the green jerseys that they wore against Ohio State last year, but then Marcus Freeman said he was going to talk to the captains, and then they were going to decide what Notre Dame is going to wear. I have heard a rumor that they are going to wear the green jerseys and the white pants that they wore against Clemson last season. As you might have heard, this game is on Peacock, which frankly is a disgrace. Like I said in the cold open, this is the biggest home game on the schedule. And I know that they thought it would be Florida State going into the season, but considering they're terrible, this was always going to be the second biggest home game no matter what. So the fact that Notre Dame allowed NBC to put this one on Peacock is ridiculous, and they should be ridiculed. Like, what is the point of having a national broadcast partner if they're not going to broadcast the biggest home game of the year? It's insane. They should flex it. They're not going to, so you're going to have to pay to watch this one. Paul Burmeister is filling in for Dan Hicks as the play-by-play voice because Dan Hicks is going to be calling golf. Burmeister is very familiar with Notre Dame. He was the voice of Notre Dame radio for years up until this past year, but he is going to call the game with everyone's favorite, Jason Garrett. The weather is not looking great for this one. Could be a factor. Right now, the high is 78, but there is a 40% chance of rain. The Weather Channel says cloudy early with showers in the afternoon hours with 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. So we'll see how that rain develops. I think it could impact the game if it starts pouring and both teams are forced to run the ball. But we are going to monitor that situation the rest of the week. This is the fifth meeting all time between the two programs, and the series is tied at 2-2. They didn't really start playing until recently, and this has been a tough game for the Irish ever since this series started last year. As I said, Louisville ended Notre Dame's playoffs hopes with a 33-20 win. That wasn't even that close. And then even when Notre Dame won back in 2020, in 2019, those are tough wins, and Louisville kicked off the series with a win back in 2014, thanks to Reggie Bonifant, which still bothers me to this day. They are coached by Jeff Brom, who is a local legend in the Derby City. Brom and his brothers were born and raised in Louisville. They played at Trinity High School, which is the local powerhouse team. Jeff became the quarterback for Louisville in 1989, played there through 1993. Then Jeff was an assistant on the staff from 2003 through 2008, and then he made his return as the head coach last season, where he led the Cards to a 10-4 record in his first year. This year, the Cardinals are 3-0 with wins over Austin Peay, an FCS school, Jacksonville State, and Georgia Tech. They beat the Yellow Jackets 31-19 last Saturday at home. But as for Saturday, Notre Dame is favored by 6.5, and the total is 46.5, according to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. So based on that, Vegas is projecting something like a 27-21 or 27-20 win for the Irish. And despite being the underdog, Louisville is actually ranked one spot higher than Notre Dame in the AP poll. The Cardinals are ranked 15th, and Notre Dame is 16th. All right, now let's get into the scouting report, and we start by looking at Louisville's offense. It's a new-look offense for the Cardinals with a new quarterback, new lead running back, new wide receivers, but you can count on every Jeff Brom-led offense to have some playmakers and the ability to put up points on just about anybody. Jeff's brother, Brian Brom, who you might remember as the quarterback for Louisville during like the mid-2000s. He was a really good player. He is the offensive coordinator, but they kind of work hand in hand, and they have had a really good offense up to this point. Granted, they were playing against pretty weak competition, but they are 12th in the country in points per game. They are 4th in the country in yards per play with 8.4. That's a pretty staggering number. They've been good on the ground and through the air. They're 9th in the country in yards per rush and 5th in yards per pass attempt. They like to let it fly. Not really surprising considering Jeff and Brian are both former quarterbacks, but still, they like to chuck it deep. And the guy chucking it deep is number 9, Tyler Shuck. He's their quarterback. He's a 6th-year college football journeyman. He started out at Oregon way back in 2019, was actually a pretty good recruit coming out of high school, top 10 quarterback, but didn't really work out at Oregon, so then he transferred to Texas Tech in 2021. He was there for 3 years, could never really stay healthy, and then he ended up with Louisville for his 6th and final year. I think he might have more eligibility just given the amount of injuries he had in COVID year, all that. Either way, he's been playing college football for an eternity, and he has had some good moments in his career, so he is no slouch by any metric, but he just hasn't really been able to stay healthy for a full season and play at a consistent level. This year, though, he's been money against pretty weak competition. I'll give you that. But he did throw for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns with 0 interceptions against Georgia Tech. And they have a bunch of different guys that they can hand the ball off to. Their starting running back, Maurice Turner, is out with an injury, but they've got a transfer from Miami, number 21, Donald Chaney. He ran for 478 yards last year for the Hurricanes. They also have 2 true freshman backs who actually lead the team in rushing yards, Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. They are very fast. They put up big numbers against the bad teams, but then when Louisville was playing Georgia Tech, Chaney was getting the bulk of the carries. But watch out for Brown and Watson. Those 2 guys can really break off any run into a big play. At wide receiver, they added a big-time player in the transfer portal, number 5, Colin Lacey. He put up massive numbers for South Alabama last year. Very highly coveted prospect by all the big teams in college football. Louisville was able to land him, but then Lacey suffered a broken collarbone injury on the very last practice of preseason camp. He has not played at all this year, and he is apparently a game-time decision for Saturday. How effective will he be? I'm not sure, but the fact that he's even an option to play is a concern for Notre Dame's defense because he is just that good. But even without Lacey, if they don't have him out there on Saturday or he's out there but he's just not as effective, they have another stud transfer from Alabama, number 1, Ja'Cory Brooks. He was a top recruit coming out of high school, caught an unbelievable touchdown pass last week for the Cardinals against the Yellow Jackets. He's going to be one of the best wide receivers that Notre Dame has to face all season long. As I said, top recruit coming out of high school, really, really good ability on the outside. Right now, he already has 297 yards on the season in just 3 games, so he's a really good player. Another player to keep an eye on, number 0, Chris Bell. They did lose their number 3 wide receiver to a season-ending injury, but they've got athletes all over the field who can make some plays. They haven't used their tight end a ton in the passing game. Number 5, Jamari Johnson. He only has 5 catches for 69 yards on the year. And as for the offensive line, they didn't really get much push against Georgia Tech. They finished that game with just 57 rush yards on 27 attempts. That's 2.1 yards per carry, but they've still got a pretty good group. They've been able to keep Tyler Shuck clean for the bulk of the year, so Notre Dame is going to have to get a little exotic with their blitzes, which leads me to my keys for the Notre Dame defense. Number 1, do not, under any circumstance, let them get the running game going. I understand that Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, is willing to give up some yards on the ground to prevent explosive pass plays, but That did them in last season, along with some bad run fits by Maris Leofau and DJ Brown. And this Louisville team is going to test Notre Dame's secondary, no doubt. And even though I believe that Notre Dame has one of the best secondaries in the entire country with Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts, Louisville will hit on some chunk plays. That is going to happen. But so long as Notre Dame can shut the running game down, especially in early situations to force some third and longs, over the course of the game, I feel like Notre Dame's secondary is going to win more than not. Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, they need to have huge games. There were some concerns about Christian Gray and whether or not he was going to be able to play in this game. I've heard some encouraging things. I think he's going to be ready to go, and I'm expecting another big game from Adon Schuler. So I feel good about Notre Dame's secondary, but last year Louisville ran for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns against Notre Dame after they only ran for 20 yards the week prior against NC State. I remember doing the scouting report last year, looking at that matchup and saying, oh, well, they're not going to be able to run the ball against Notre Dame. Notre Dame should be able to shut them down. Well, that didn't happen. Jawar Jordan had a huge day, and that is a big reason why Louisville was able to win that game. Even though Louisville couldn't run it against Georgia Tech, they have the horses to do it. Notre Dame cannot let that happen, or else this defense could be in some serious trouble. My other key to the game for the Irish defense, confuse Tyler Shuck and force some turnovers. Shuck has not thrown an interception on the year, which is a pretty crazy stat because they've already played 3 games this season. But last year, I thought that Jeff and his brother Brian got the better of Al Golden with their game plan, and rarely do you ever see that against Al Golden. That's rare, but I have faith that Al Golden has some new looks specifically to beat this Louisville offense. It reminds me of how badly Caleb Williams and USC carved up Notre Dame's defense back in 2022. That was really bad. By far, the worst game that Notre Dame has played on defense under Al Golden. The next year, Al Golden certainly learned from those mistakes and had a game plan that had Caleb Williams seeing ghosts, and Lincoln Riley really had no answer. So I have a lot of confidence that over the offseason, Al Golden watched that tape, figured out what they did wrong, and he's going to correct those mistakes going up against Louisville on Saturday. Louisville does have different personnel this year, but I think that Al Golden is ready to confuse Tyler Shuck and force him into mistakes because they absolutely need that to happen. As I said, he has not committed a turnover all year. They got to be due, right? And this defense can help out the offense in a big way if they force some turnovers and give themselves good field position. Notre Dame's defense has created some havoc plays, but not enough turnovers. They need to force some turnovers on Saturday to give them a shot at winning. Speaking of that offense, Notre Dame desperately needs to find its rhythm on that side of the ball, but Louisville's defense is not going to make it easy. Can Riley Leonard and the Irish finally get it going? That's next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Roy. Have you heard about Roy? It stands for Return on You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As you all know, NIL has changed the game for athletes, while Roy changes the NIL game for fans. It allows fans to directly back their favorite college athletes, and with Roy, fans can play a key role in shaping the future of their favorite teams, while athletes maximize their name, image, and likeness potential. Fans' contributions are securely held and are only distributed if the athlete makes the decision that aligns with the fan's support. If not, the money is returned to the fan. Download Roy for iOS or Android and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get the Roy app for iOS or Android and start making an impact on your favorite team. Use referral code LOCKEDON for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Today's episode is also sponsored by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Speaking from my own experience, I know that whenever we're looking to hire a new team member, we use LinkedIn to help find the perfect fit, and it's so easy because they do the heavy lifting. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Jeff Brom might be known for his offense, but as Notre Dame fans saw last year, he can build a pretty damn good defense, and he's done it again this year. Up to this point, they've only allowed 11 points per game, which is 13th in the country, and they've been better at stopping the run than the pass, but they're still pretty good overall. Opponents are averaging just 2.5 yards per carry, which is 11th in the country, but they have allowed 10.5 yards per completion, which is pretty middle of the pack when you look at the rest of the country and their defenses. They've been really good on the money downs, though. They're 9th in third down defense, which is actually one spot ahead of Notre Dame's defense, and they're allowing conversions just 23.8% of the time on third down. They're also 14th in red zone defense, and they have got some absolute studs. And it starts with number 9, Ashton Gelati. Probably a name that Notre Dame fans remember because he absolutely dominated the Irish last season. And that was against Joe Alt, who it was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. He also made life hell for Blake Fisher. He could absolutely be on an NFL team right now if he decided to declare for the draft, but he decided to come back, play for the Cardinals, and he is a very, very good player. In that game, he had 1.5 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 6 pressures. But he only has 1 sack this year. But again, he's a great player. Do not let the numbers this year deceive you. Number 96 on Louisville, Tramel Logan. He leads the team in sacks with 3. He's a transfer from USF, also has a forced fumble. He's a good addition on their defensive line. Number 34, TJ Quinn is another name that Notre Dame fans are probably familiar with. He leads the team in tackles with 14 total, 5 solo, and he had an absolute field day last year. 10 total tackles, including 5 stops to the line of scrimmage and a tackles for loss against the Irish. And their best defensive back, number 3, Quincy Riley, had a great game as well. He's back this year, but he's questionable for this game. Something to keep an eye out for because he had an interception on the first drive of the game, really set the tone for the Louisville defense, and then he only ended up allowing 1 reception on 6 targets in that game. This would be a big loss for the Cardinals if he's not able to go in this one, but if he's not, keep an eye out for UCF transfer Corey Thornton if Riley can't go. That guy had 5 tackles last week with a cast on his hand. He's a player, he's a gamer, and he's something that Notre Dame is going to have to account for on pretty much every play. They also have another pretty talented linebacker, number 6, Stequan Clark. He's tied for the team lead in tackles with TJ Quinn. He's a sophomore, was not a factor against Notre Dame last year, but figures to be a factor on Saturday. In their only game against a Power 4 opponent, Louisville did give up a lot of pass yards, but very little on the ground. Haynes King, the quarterback of Georgia Tech, was 21 of 32 passing, 312 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 picks, but they were able to hit a lot of chunk plays in the passing game, including passes of 51, 45, 33, and 28 yards. Louisville's defense did not have a sack in that one, but they did register 7 tackles for loss, so they do get in the backfield and cause problems for the opposing offenses. And as we saw from Georgia Tech so far this year, they have a pretty good offensive line, so the fact that Louisville's defense was able to get 7 tackles for loss is not nothing. That is certainly something. They do have a weakness, though, and it's running quarterbacks, which is pretty good for Notre Dame because up to this point, the one thing their quarterback has been able to do is run the ball. Jacksonville State's Tyler Huff had 116 sack-adjusted rush yards against the Cardinals on 16 carries for a touchdown. Georgia Tech's Haynes King, he had 58 yards on 14 carries and a score. He was especially important on 3rd and 4th downs, although Louisville did come up with a huge 4th down stop near the goal line that could have tied the game. So my keys for the Notre Dame offense. Number 1, run, Riley, run. If you take sacks out of the equation, Riley Leonard has 351 rush yards on the season. That is actually 12 more than Jeremiah Love has, who is Notre Dame's leading running back and someone who I believe is one of the best running backs in the entire country. That is 8.4 yards per carry on true carries for 6 touchdowns. For all the complaints about his passing ability, and trust me, I've been complaining too. I'm not trying to ignore them. Those are elite numbers. Behind Jalen Milroe, the quarterback of Alabama, Riley Leonard is the best running quarterback in the entire country. And if Notre Dame is going to win this game, they need a big day from Riley Leonard through the air and on the ground, but maybe more importantly on the ground. Because if Leonard gets it going, that sets up Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price to break open some big plays. It's been a pretty hot topic of conversation among Notre Dame fans lately. Jeremiah Love needs to get more carries. I agree. He only got the ball 12 times last week against Miami, Ohio. This could be a huge breakout game for Jeremiah Love if he gets it going. But When Riley Leonard is getting big plays in the run game and they run the read option, that defense has to take into account both guys. That creates running lanes. And as we've seen, Love and Price don't need very big lanes to create a big play. And I think that if Leonard is a threat early on and this Louisville defense isn't really able to stop him, that just sets up everything else for this offense. As for the passing game, they got to get rid of the ball quickly. Louisville is absolutely going to try and put a lot of pressure on this offensive line and Riley Leonard. Notre Dame could not get anything going on offense last season, and a big reason why is they just could not block them up front. If you remember, Notre Dame decided to switch a bunch of their guys on the offensive line in the middle of the game, which still to this day is insane. I cannot believe they did that. That is like 101 what not to do with your offensive line, just switch a bunch of guys during a game. But they couldn't really block them. They tried a few other things. Guess what? It didn't work, and Louisville just made life hell on Notre Dame's offense all night long. This season, Riley Leonard hasn't really handled pressure all that well, and the left side of the line has not been very good. But Mike Denbrock and the offense can help Riley Leonard out by running short passing plays so he can get rid of the ball quickly. We saw this a lot against Texas A&M when they were going up against a better defensive line in what Texas A&M has compared to Louisville, but it's certainly comparable. Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, those guys are great players. Louisville has some great players as well, who I just mentioned. And in order to sort of minimize their impact against Texas A&M, Riley Leonard was getting the ball out quickly. He's finding his receivers out in the horizontal passing game, some screens, stuff like that to get the ball going. And I think that is a great way for Notre Dame to get the ball going up against Louisville, because if Louisville starts stacking the box, throw it horizontally. You have wide receivers who can make plays with the ball in their hands like Jayden Harrison, Jordan Faison, Bo Collins. Get them the ball quickly in space and let them go to work, and don't let Gelati and these other talented players in Louisville's defense get in the backfield and force Riley Leonard into mistakes. My last key for the Notre Dame offense, convert on the deep passes when you take them. Considering how much Louisville is going to sell out to stop the run, there are going to be some opportunities to make plays downfield. I don't think Notre Dame is going to take a ton of them because, again, you need everything to work in that situation. You need to have the offensive line to give Leonard time, and then Leonard to actually convert on the pass and the receivers to get open and make the catch. But Notre Dame is going to take them. They have got to convert when they take a shot. And even if they don't catch the ball, if they can draw a pass interference penalty, that counts too. And if Notre Dame is going to move the ball on this defense, they're going to have to hit on a few of those plays. I really liked what I saw against Miami in the sense that they were pushing the ball downfield way more than they have all season long. It didn't work every time, but they were able to draw 3 pass interference penalties, had a 38-yard touchdown pass to Bo Collins. So we know they have it in them. They got to do it again on Saturday in a big stage. And I think that all they need is like 2. Right? If they can get 2 big chunk plays in the passing game, that changes the entire dynamic for the Louisville defense, because then they have to play for that, prepare for that, play a little bit further off the ball, which then creates running lanes, which is going to be the bread and butter for this Notre Dame offense. Last week, Louisville was able to secure their win over Georgia Tech with a blocked field goal that they returned for a score. So the Irish absolutely need to figure out the issues on their special teams units this week, or it could cost them. More on that, plus my predictions right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All right, I already gave out one pick this week. By the way, didn't I pick Commanders on the show? I gave that one out. Hopefully you took that well. This week, we're going to look ahead to Thursday Night Football. I like the Giants, who are now plus 5.5 against the Cowboys on FanDuel. They were 4.5 in yesterday's show. Now they're 5.5, and I'm taking the Giants. Plus, I'm going to give out the same game parlay. Don't normally do this. We've got one this week. It's 4 legs, all anytime touchdown scores. I'm taking CeeDee Lamb, the wide receiver for the Cowboys, Malik Neighbors for the Giants, Ezekiel Elliott for the Cowboys, and Devin Singletary. If you bet $10 on this prop right now on FanDuel, it will net you $225.88. So those are my picks this week. I'm sticking with them. And if you want to bet more, just visit FanDuel.com today. So after we all watched Notre Dame shoot themselves in the foot over and over again on special teams against Miami, what was the one consistent message that we had about that unit? It didn't cost them against Miami because they were much better than Miami, but it absolutely could cost them against a better team. If they commit the same mistakes against Louisville, it absolutely could cost them this game. As I mentioned, Louisville returned a blocked field goal, 55 yards, 4 score to ice the game against Georgia Tech. Those types of plays could determine this game on Saturday. So let's take a look at Louisville's special teams unit and how Notre Dame could sort of fix their issues that they've been having as of late. Louisville's kicker, Brock Travelstead, has been a bit inconsistent this year. He's 3 of 6 on field goal attempts. He missed a chip shot from beneath 30 yards, but he also had 2 misses that were 50 yards or more. So I don't really think those are that bad. Last year, he finished 70%, 17 of 24 on field goal attempts, but he did miss, I count 6 field goals from under 50 yards or more, and then he was 1 of 2 from 50 plus. So he can make them, just not really on a consistent basis. They do have a good punter, Brady Hodges, who is averaging 43.5 yards per punt, have not done a ton of damage in the return game up to this point. So really, it's just on Notre Dame figuring out their own mistakes and correcting them this week. Have they figured out the field goal unit? Because Mitch Jeter, the kicker, has been great when he has a real chance to make the kick. I did not put the blocked kicks on him against Northern Illinois, and then we had the bad snap last week when the operation is clicking, as it was against Texas A&M on the road in a hostile environment. He went 3 for 3 in critical moments in that game. So I have faith in Mitch Jeter. I don't have faith in the unit. They need to get that corrected. Punter James Rundell shut off his leg, finally, this past week against Miami after a really rough start for him. He had a couple bombs, a 53-yarder and a 54-yarder that flipped the field. Can he keep that going? I really hope so, because Notre Dame might need to flip the field a little bit in this game. It looks like when they just let him go out there and kick the ball as high and as far as he can, he's much better off. So I think that's going to be the game plan for Notre Dame this week. Who's going to be back there returning punts? Personally, I think it should be Jaden Greathouse until Jordan Faison is fully healthy and he's been out there on the field more. Like, one thing about returning punts is you have to be doing it all the time. And we know that Jordan Faison missed a couple games with an injury, and it's not something that you could just pick back up like riding a bike. You need to be doing that every day. And that first punt in the game against Miami, Faison made a play that he probably shouldn't have made. He probably should have just let it go, or he just should have yelled Peter and tried to secure the catch and go down. But yes, it was a bad play by Jordan Faison, but I don't even think he should have been out there in that situation anyway. So if Jaden Greathouse is back there, I feel a little bit more comfortable. Although I will admit, I think Jordan Faison is more dynamic with the ball in his hands. It's just a matter of, do you trust him to actually catch the punt? Because as we saw, that is a big deal. Way too many miscues as a group. We had the penalty on the punt. Then they also had the block in the back penalty, even though I think it was a weak flag. Can't let that happen, Junior Tuihalamaka. So on one hand, you could say that entire game, that entire experience should be a lesson for Marty Biagi's group so they can prevent it from ever happening again. Or it's the start of a trend that could go really poorly for the Irish. We're going to have to see on Saturday. And that leads me to my predictions. At this point, I see 2 outcomes. And I'm not just saying Notre Dame could win or lose. I'm saying 2 results that are going to have drastically different feelings surrounding them. I think the first option is Notre Dame has an impressive win, and it's not like going down to the wire. It's a close game. It's not easy, but they actually win in pretty strong fashion. Leonard plays well enough. The Irish fans feel good again going into the bye week, and everything is sort of back on track. They're like, okay, Northern Illinois loss was bad. Hasn't always been pretty on offense, but this was a good win, a strong win, an impressive win against a good team. Everyone goes into the bye week happy. Or the other option. And in that case, I think Louisville comes out just like they did last year with their hair on fire and kind of dominate this game. If Notre Dame is not ready to play like they weren't at the beginning of the game last week, this could be a long day. Louisville could expose all the flaws that we have seen from this Notre Dame team in recent weeks, and they could end up winning relatively easily if Notre Dame is not ready to play. That would unravel pretty much everything, because Notre Dame would have 2 losses in the first month of the year. They would go into the bye week with the most toxic environment ever, and then for 2 weeks, it would just be nothing but negativity from the fan base, from the team, and all of their hopes, all of the expectations that they had going into the season would be crushed before the end of September. It could be really, really bad. And even if they win, it's not like it's going to completely right all the wrongs, right? Like, Notre Dame is still going to have to deal with the loss at NIU that's going to hang over their head all season long. The only thing that could truly rectify that would be winning a game in the college football playoff. If they do that, then you can kind of look back on the NIU loss as a fluke. But it's going to take that result in order for that to happen. So there is a ton at stake right now for Notre Dame. Personally, I would absolutely hate it if Notre Dame ends up losing this game and all of our worst fears come true, because then the next 2 weeks would be miserable, and really the rest of the season, it would just suck the life out of the season. And that is what Louisville did last year. To their credit, they beat Notre Dame, gave them their second loss, and all of those playoff hopes were gone. The Sam Hartman experience was a failure after that. It just all got wiped away from Louisville. So hopefully Notre Dame has some damn pride after that result, comes out on Saturday and is ready to play. Even though there's some new faces for sure on the team, that loss and the way that they lost that game should stick with you, and they should absolutely come out with their hair on fire, ready to get some revenge against Louisville. And I will say, for all of Marcus Freeman's flaws, he has been really good at getting his team ready to play in the biggest games. Think back to 2022. They were ready to play on the road against Ohio State. They were ready to play against Clemson, hosting a top 5 team at home. In 2023, they were ready to play Ohio State at the beginning of the game, maybe not in the last play when they only had 10 men, but Notre Dame was ready to go in that game. This year, they were absolutely ready for Texas A&M. Will they be ready to play another ranked team, Louisville, at home? We will see. But I will say Louisville is a damn good team, and this is going to be a tough game for the Irish, but I like the Irish to win 27-17. We're going to know early on how this game is going to go. I don't think they can afford to go down early. The tension in the stadium and on the sideline will probably be too much to overcome. I'm not sure if they could come back from it. I wouldn't bet on it, certainly, but I think it's going to be the opposite. I think Notre Dame comes out, they're ready to go, they make some plays, they get the crowd into it, then they feed off of that energy and they get to win. Even though I like them to win by double digits, I think it's going to be a close game throughout. Louisville is going to score on this defense, but I think overall, as the game plays out, this Notre Dame defense will be good enough to keep them within check, and the offense isn't going to light the world on fire, but they're going to hit on a couple big plays, find the end zone. Riley Leonard is going to use his legs. He's going to be good enough as a passer, and I think this could be a huge game for Jeremiah Love in the national spotlight, because I know that the college football world is going to be fixated on Georgia, Alabama at night. This is the big game right before that. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this one, I think, even though it's on Peacock. Maybe there won't be as many eyeballs because of that, but I'm not going to rant about that. I think Jeremiah Love is a big day. I also think Notre Dame is going to need Mitch Jeter's leg to convert on a couple field goals. If they give him time, I think he's going to be able to do that. And some well-timed turnovers by the Irish defense will be the difference in this game. Even though I'm picking Notre Dame to win, I'm going to level with you. I'm incredibly nervous about this one. It's probably not going to be very enjoyable for me during the game. Given what is riding on this, I'm going to be at the game with my family, my girlfriend's first game, so she's probably going to see me at my absolute worst in the stadium. But once it's over, I think we are going to let out a big collective sigh of relief and go into the bye week happy. All right, that is going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. You're not going to want to miss tomorrow's episode with Mike Rutherford of the Card Chronicle. We're going to get more insight into this Louisville team and how that fan base is feeling about the game and their team going into this one. Plus, Mike's got the best personality, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So be on the lookout for that. Also, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And for your second listen, check out the Locked On College Football Podcast with Spencer McLaughlin, and I'll see you all tomorrow.